It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Slovenia. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Slovenia's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period and a couple of other factors to categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, seemingly off the squad, and retired or off the squad for a significant period. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over the list we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode has three sections. In section one, we look at some general information on the team. Section two, we cover the main candidates in each position and their likelihood of making the final squad. And in section three, we summarize and have some concluding business. So let's begin with section one. Some information on the team, on the squad, beginning with retirements. And since Slovenia hasn't been part of an international tournament since 2010, we do have some kind of key retirements for them. So the first is Josip Ilicic, actually not officially retired and still playing club soccer. He has 79 caps and 16 goals, but he is 36 years old. He's playing back in Slovenia for Maribor, his second stint with them. He was with Atalanta in Italy and Fiorentina also. So actually not part of any major tournament and last played for the national team in November of 2021. So he seems well off the squad here. Next is Boštjan Cesar. And he was part of the 2010 World Cup squad, and he retired in 2018 with 101 caps and 10 goals. Third, we have five candidates or five players to talk about here. Bojan Jokic, and he retired in 2019 with 100 caps and 1 goal. He also played in the 2010 World Cup as a starter. Fourthly, Walter Bursa. Walter Bursa retired in 2018 with 90 caps and 7 goals, also a starter in that 2010 World Cup squad. And finally, Milivoje Novakovic, who played from 2006 to 17. And retired with 80 caps and 32 goals, an impressive 32 goals there for the national team, and also one of the World Cup 2010 squad. So those players have been off the team for quite a while, but again, since they haven't been in a major tournament, their retirement has kind of passed by without mention. Let's go to club affiliations for Slovenia players and give you an idea of the quality of the team on that basis. So they don't have many players playing for top clubs. It would be goalkeeper Jan Oblak with Atletico Madrid, probably the biggest star there. A lot of their players move over to Italy. Slovenia borders with Italy on the north, so the top players tend to go to Italy, and they do have some playing for strong Italian teams. So defender Jaka Bijol with Udinese, also with Udinese Sandy Lovric, he's a midfielder, and Yeah, that's it. They do have other players, but for slightly lesser teams, and that's generally the story. It is kind of slightly lesser teams in Europe. Not many of them play in in Slovenia. The top teams there being Olympia, uh, uh, Ljubljana. I'm probably butchering that name, and Selji and Maribor, probably the top teams. So a lot of the secondary players do play for those kind of clubs, or for clubs in Slovenia. But other players play for clubs kind of the quality of Fenerbahce in Turkey, Sturm Graz in Austria, um, and Panathinaikos in Greece. We do have Benjamin Sesko, their forward, playing for RB Leipzig in Germany. That's a pretty big name too. Okay, I hope I've covered that properly, but just to give an impression of their club affiliations, let's move on to recent games. We're examining the participation of players from the start of 2023 here. So Slovenia played 13 games over that period. And so basically, we're judging their likelihood of making the squad based on that participation. And we said that Slovenia, in terms of tournaments, have not reached a tournament since the 2010 World Cup. So participation in this Euro Cup, a big deal for them. And that means I don't think there are any players left on the squad who were part of that 2010 World Cup squad. We'll point it out if there are. Let's look at their formations. So very consistent actually for Slovenia. It is a 4-4-2 formation almost all the time. And in fact, the two exceptions to that are game 3, which was a 4-2-2-2 formation, so almost a 4-2-2 form. 4-4-2 formation there, except the wingers become attacking midfielders. And then the other one was towards the end, their third last game, which was in January 2024, so a bit off the international schedule there. And that was very experimental, not only in the formation, which was a 4-5-1, but in the players used. Basically, secondary bench players or new players played in that one. Most of the starters didn't play. The following game, their second last game, was also somewhat experimental. That was a friendly with Malta, but they did use a 4-4-2 formation there. And so 85% of the games for Slovenia over the period were that 4-4-2 formation. Okay, we finished this section by looking at their upcoming games. So they have a couple of home games there, both of these in Slovenia, and they play Armenia on June 4th and Bulgaria on June 7th. So kind of mid to lower level competition there to make out the final arrangements on their team. Let's look at move into part 2, the players and their likelihood of making it. So we begin with the manager, Matjas Kek. Matjas Kek is in his second stint of management for the Slovenian team. He actually was the manager when they reached the World Cup in 2010. And he's coached a few clubs, Rijeka in Croatia for 5 years, and he managed in a team in Saudi Arabia also, but mostly has been with the Slovenia team, not only as the head manager, but as the underage manager in 2006. Let's talk about his tenure, this second tenure. So, well, we saw he managed Slovenia to the 2010 World Cup in his first stint with them. That first stint lasted from 2007 to 2011. And then his second stint began in 2018. So he hasn't made a tournament yet. This 2024 Euro Cup will be his first tournament in his second stint. In the 2020 Euro qualifying, they finished 4th of 6 tied for third place there, and it was exactly the same in the 2022 World Cup qualifying, fourth of six and tied for third place. So those are kind of par results for Slovenia. So this 2024 campaign, where he finished second of six and earned automatic qualification, was a very good result. So Matjas Kek, the manager, leading them through this tournament. Okay, let's move on to goalkeepers and take a look at the candidates there. We have a definite candidate in Jan Oblak, and two likely candidates. The first one is Matevž Vidovcek, and the other is Vid Belec. And then a possible candidate in Igor Vekic, and a possible but unlikely candidate in Martin Turk. Let's go back to the beginning and look at the main candidate, Jan Oblak. He's 31 years old and has been with Slovenia since 2012 with 64 caps and no goals. So a real veteran for the squad. A veteran also for Atletico Madrid, where he plays his club soccer. He's been with them since 2014, so coming up on 10 years with them. Since the start of 2023, he started 10 of their 13 games. He was injured for 2 games and then not selected for that January 2024 friendly with the United States. Next, we have Matevž Vidovcek, and he's 24 years old and just joined the team in 2023 and has 1 cap, and he plays for Ljubljana in Slovenia since 2020. He was with Atalanta in Italy for a couple of years before that, and he got his first appearance on the bench in November of 2022, and over the past year and a half has started 1 of their 13 games and was on the bench for 5. However, he was injured for the last 7 matches, and when I started preparing it, he was listed as an injury concern. He had a shoulder injury from all the way back in October 2023. But since then, that injury concern has been removed, so it looks like he is okay to play. Next is Vid Belec, and he is 30 years old, been with Slovenia since 2014 and 20 caps in his time. He plays for Apoel in Cyprus, and another of the players who played quite a bit in Italy, including Inter Milan from 2010 to 2015, although he was loaned out quite a bit there. And yeah, I'm just okay. I'll come back to that later. So Vid Belec has started 1 of their 13 games since the start of 2023, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 10, and not selected for 1 other. So I'm actually thinking Vid Belec is probably ahead of Vidovcek there. So we'll just move him in on the graphic. And finally, we are the possible candidate is Igor Vekic. He is 26 years old and new to the team since 2024 with 1 cap. He did get a cap in his time. Actually, he had appeared on the bench many times since June of 2021. And he returned after a 14-month absence in January of 2024 to start 1 of the remaining 3 games. And he was on the bench for the last 2 matches. So that friendly with the USA kind of got him in the door, or back in the door, I should say. And then the player who is possible but unlikely is Martin Turk. And he is 21 years old and plays for Parma in Italy and was on loan to Sampdoria in Italy too. So pretty respectable clubs there. And I just want to kind of make sure of his situation. But he returned after a 2-year absence in June of 2023, and was on the bench for five of their games, but he was with the under-21 team for the last two games and not selected in January. So basically, hasn't been there for the last three games. So we consider him kind of unlikely, especially with these candidates ahead of him. However, there is a chance of him getting his of getting back in there. So let's summarize the position of goalkeeper. It's always Jan Oblak, but as we saw, he was injured for both games in June 2023 and also not called up for that January 2024 friendly. Each of the keepers below, Belic, Vidovsek and Vekic, replaced him once. And most recently, it was our possible candidate, Vekic, in January of 2024. But actually, that's not really indicative of his being the second string keeper because, as we said, it was secondary players playing in that friendly. So right now, Belic looks like the most likely candidate for secondary keeper. Okay, let's move on to the defense and central defenders. So we have a definite candidate in Jaka Bijol and two likely candidates, Miha Blazic and Vanja Durkusic, and then two possible candidates, David Brekalo and Marcel Ratnik. We also have two possible but unlikely candidates in Zan Zalatel and David Zek. Let's go back. We're looking at two positions here because it's always a four-man backline for Slovenia. So two central defenders. And Jaka Bijol is the definite candidate. He's 25 years old and has 47 caps and one goal since 2018 for Slovenia. He plays for Udinese in Italy since 2022 and was with CSKA Moscow for 4 years before that. Loaned out quite a bit by them though. No, just loaned out to one team. Bijol has started 12 of their 13 games over this period. He was injured for the other. Next, we have Miha Blazic. He's 31 years old and has 33 caps and no goals since 2017. And Blazic plays for Lech Poznan in Poland and has been in France and Hungary as well. He started 7 of their 13 games since the start of 2023, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3, and just 2 matches that he wasn't selected for, so we consider Blazic a likely candidate. Also likely is Vanja Durkusic. He's 24 years old and just 6 caps because he got his first one in 2023 there, and he plays for Sochi in Russia since 2022. He got his first appearance on the bench at the beginning of this period in March 2023 and started just 1 of their remaining 12 games. However, he was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 6, which is why we have him as a likely candidate. Getting more starts, actually, is our first possible candidate, David Brekalo. He's 25 years old and has 12 caps and 1 goal since his first in 2022. And he is now playing in the USA with Orlando City since 2024. He was with Viking in Norway for 3 years before that. And he started 4 of their 13 games over this period, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for the last one. But he was out with 2 consecutive injuries and also not selected for 2 matches. So that moved him down to a possible candidate, in our opinion. Also at the possible level is Marcel Ratnik, and he got his first cap in January 2024 and didn't start the following 2 games after. Actually, he was with the under-21 team And I'm just making a decision here. He really shouldn't be at the possible level. And to be honest, there were quite a few players who played in that January 2024 game who didn't play after. So most of them I didn't put on the list. So I'm actually going to remove him from the list because the chances are very remote for him and for other players who are in that position. David Zek is one of them, so I'll remove him on the list. I may leave Zan Zalatel on. That January game was his only start, but he had been on the bench for 2 games prior to that, so we'll leave him as a possible but unlikely candidate. Okay, that is the list of players, so let's summarize the position. As mentioned, it's always 2 centre-backs. 2023 started with Blažič and Bijol as the pairing. However, Blažič subbed out 5 minutes into that first game of 2023, and Brecalo took over. And he reinforced his argument to be a starter with a goal, his only international goal in that very game. He continued then to replace Blažič, who was relegated to the bench. That injury was not long-term. And so it was Brecalo for the next 4 games. But Blažič returned as the starter in September of 2023. So Blažič and Bijol remained the starting pair all through the fall and to the end of the period in March. However, in January 2024, both were replaced in that experimental game. And in the first game in March, also somewhat experimental, Durkusic replaced Blažič. Durkusic was not one of the players tried out in January, a bit more permanent member of the team there. Okay, that's it for central defenders. Let's move on to left backs. And here we have 2 likely candidates. The first, Eric Janza, and the second, Jure Balkovic. Okay, and let's look at them. Eric Janza is 30 years old, but only has 8 caps for the national team, 2 goals though. He's been with them since 2014 though, so a bit of a struggle to get on the team. He plays for Górnik Zabrze in Poland and has played in many countries, especially in Eastern Europe. Okay, so Janza actually was off the team and returned after a more than 2.5-year absence. In June of 2023, he came back and he then started 7 of their remaining 11 games and was on the bench for 3 others. So came back and is now entrenched in the team and a likely candidate for this tournament. Jure Balkovic is 29 years old, and he has 31 caps and no goals since 2018, and he plays for Alanyaspor in Turkey. That's his second team in Turkey, and he also played for a few clubs in Italy. Balkovic has started 3 of their 13 games over this recent period, and he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 6. So just 1 match that he wasn't selected for, and also a likely candidate. So let's look at the position. It was Balkovic in 2 of the first 3 games, and the right back, Kornsenik, started in game 2. But as we saw, Janza came back in June for game 4, and he held the role quite firmly. He was replaced twice by the right back Korsenik. And in the second last game, the somewhat experimental game, right back Stojanovic replaced him. Anyway, Eric Janza with a strong grip on the left back position there. Let's go over to right backs then, and yes, let's go over to right backs. And here we only have 1 candidate, the player we just mentioned, who's a definite candidate and whose name I can't seem to get right, and I'm not even sure if I am saying it right. It's Zan Korsic, Cornish Nick. Cornish Nick. Okay, I finally got a bit closer to it, I think. Cornish Nick has been with um, Slovenia since 2021. He's 29 years old, and he has 26 caps and 1 goal. And he has moved back to Slovenia, playing for Celje in Slovenia since 2022. He was in Bulgaria with Ludogorets Razgrad there, and but mostly actually has played in Slovenia. Cornish Nick has started 12 of their 13 games since the start of 2023. He was on the bench for one other. So we're going to see that he is a right back and a starting right back, but does move over to the left. In fact, he was coded initially as a centre back, but we're going to have to change that. Okay, so it is usually Cornish Nick. But as we saw, he did move over to the left back position for 3 games. 2 of those were early on. And on the right, he was replaced by Stojanovic on those occasions where he moved. And then when it happened towards the end, he moved to the left once towards the end. It was Balkovic, the left back who we just met, who stepped in. So we actually might have Stojanovic as a player, because he's actually coded as a left back, and we could have talked about him here because he did play in the position, but he has played much more often as a right winger, so we moved him to talk about him there. So we'll come back to him later on, and meanwhile move on to the midfield here. So for midfielders, we have 2 defensive midfielders who are likely candidates. The first, Sandy Lovric, and the second, John Gorenk Stankovic. Both likely candidates here. So let's take a look at them. Sandy Lovric is 26 years old and has been with Slovenia since 2020, 33 caps and 4 goals. And Lovric plays for Udinese in Italy since 2022 and has also played in Switzerland and Austria. Quite a few clubs, or quite a bit of time in Austria there. He was born in Austria, actually, and started playing with his youth club at 4 years of age. So that's all he's ever known. Lovric started 4 of their 13 games since the start of 2023. He was also subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 4. So he is a likely candidate here. Just 1 game that he was not selected for. I suspect that was the friendly in January. John Gorenk Stankovic is 28 years old and has 22 caps and 1 goal since 2020 for the national team. And he plays for Sturm Graz. That was actually one of the teams Lovric played for too. Gorenk Stankovic has been with Sturm Graz since 2020, and he played for Huddersfield in England for 4 years before that. Gorenk Stankovic started only 1 of their 13 games over this period, but he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 3. So in his case, it was 3 matches that he wasn't selected for, but we still have him as a likely candidate here. All right, before we summarize the position, we're going to introduce also the central midfielders, because in their 4-4-2 formation, there's really no distinction between them. So for central midfielders, we have 2 definite candidates. The first is Adam Gnezda Serin, and the other is Timmy Max Elsnick. We also have a likely candidate in Jasmine Kurtic, and a possible candidate in Miha Zak. And lastly, we have a player who seems to be off the squad. That is Domen Cernigoj, and we'll dispense with him quickly here. He actually just appeared on the bench for 1 of the 13 games over the period here. He was injured for 6 games and not selected for the others. So Cernigoj not really a candidate here. Okay, let's go back to the top and look at our definite candidate, Adam Gnezda Surin. And he's 24 years old and has been with Slovenia since 2020 with 29 caps and 4 goals. He plays for Panathinaikos in Greece since 2022 and with Nuremberg in Germany for 2 years before that. He started 12 of their 13 games over the period and missed 1 game, purportedly injured for the January 2024 friendly, but he was back in March where he actually scored a goal for the team. So Adam Gnezda Surin couldn't be a more definite candidate. The other definite is Timmy Max Elsnik, and he is 26 years old with 13 caps and 1 goal since 2021. He plays for Olimpia Ljubljana in Slovenia, and that since 2020 he was with Derby in England for a few years before that, and actually with their youth club before turning professional. But was with youth clubs in Slovenia before that. So Elsnik has started 9 of their 13 games since the start of 2023, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for the first 2 matches. So a definite candidate in our opinion. Next, Jasmin Kurtic is a likely candidate. He's 35 years old, so another veteran, but with the team since 2010, so 2012. So all of those players who participated in the 2010 World Cup are gone. Kurtic has 90 caps and 2 goals, and he plays for a small club in Italy called Sud Tirol since 2020, and has played in various countries, especially in Italy, for some of the bigger teams too, like Atalanta and Fiorentina, where he was on loan. Kurtic has only started 1 of their 13 games here. He was subbed in for 6 though, and on the bench for 1. So injured for 2 matches and not selected for 3, kind of drifting off the squad or probably aging out a little bit, Jasmin Kurtic, but we think it's likely he'll be called to the tournament, if only for his experience. Next, we have Miha Zak, and he is 29 years old and has 41 caps and 8 goals since 2016. Some of these central midfielders really may be more attacking. If you think about the 4-4-2 formation, the players may be responsible for creating offense. Miha Zak plays for Fenerbahce in Turkey since 2019. And has started 2 of their 13 games over the recent period, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 4. However, he was not selected for the last 2 matches, so that moved him down a little in our estimation. We have him as a possible candidate. Okay, those are the central midfielders in addition to the defensive midfielders we looked at. So we can now summarize the position. So always 2 players in the 4-4-2 formation, and even the one time they used that 4-2-2-2 formation. So just once in the 4-5-1 game, it was 3 in the middle, and that was an experimental game, as we saw. So Gnezda Surin was partnered with 4 different players over the first 4 matches. The 4th of these was Elsnik, who remained the partner throughout. And actually, those other players who had tried out, we will talk about later because they popped up here and there. One of them was Sandy Lovrich. Okay, Gnezda Surin only missed that January friendly, which Elsnik actually did play in, and having become the partner in June 2023, Elsnik only missed 1 game, not that friendly, but the following game, a partly experimental game also against Malta, and in that case he was replaced by the veteran Kurtic. Okay, that is the situation in central midfield. Let's move on The next positions we have on the list are left midfielders and right midfielders. And in that 4-4-2 formation, this position is not used. However, we do have one candidate who is coded as a right midfielder, and we might as well deal with him here. So that is a possible candidate, Tommy Horvat, a right midfielder. Tommy Horvat is 25 years old and has been with the team since 2022. And he has 6 caps for them, no goals. He plays for Sturm Graz in Austria. We've seen a couple of other players who've been with that team. And Horvat started one of their 13 games since the start of 2023. That was the second last game against Malta. He also subbed in for one and was on the bench for 2. So all in all, not selected for 9 matches. However, since his participation has been recent, he started against Malta there as a left winger rather than the right midfielder that he's coded at. He is a possible candidate again because of the recent participation. So Tommy Horvat, the only one in this coded as a right or left midfielder. Let's move on to left winger. And there we have 2 candidates. We've actually moved a candidate into this position. So the first one is Benjamin Verbic, who is coded as a left winger and is a likely candidate. The other one is Jan Mlarkar, and he is coded as a forward, but we move him here because he's been playing in this position. He's also a likely candidate. So 2 candidates to look at here. And the first, Benjamin Verbic, is 30 years old with 58 caps and 6 goals since 2015. He plays for Panathinaikos in Greece, not the first player we've seen with that club, since 2022. And he also played for Dynamo Kiev, a pretty big club there in the Ukraine, from 2018 to 2022. Verbic has started 3 of their 13 games over the recent period, but he was subbed in for 8 matches. Just 2 matches he wasn't selected for, so we regard Verbic as a likely candidate. The other one, Jan Mlarkar, is 26 years old and has been with Slovenia since 2021, 15 caps and 2 goals. He plays for Pisa in Italy, and has been with a couple of English clubs as well as Italian clubs. So Mlarkar has started 8 of their 13 games recently and subbed in for 1 and on the bench for the last one, but not selected for 3 matches. However, 2 of those were the first 2 matches, so Mlarkar looks like a likely candidate to us here. Okay, let's summarize the position of left winger. The position is always used in the 4-4-2 formation. Verbic started the first 2 games, and game 3 was the 4-2-2-2 formation, so the winger role becomes a left attacking midfielder. From game 4, the Mlarkar, again coded as a forward, got the start and continued in the position all the way until January and those experimental friendlies. In the last 3 games, though, 3 different players were used, and defensive midfielder Lovric, who pops up here and there, was the starter in the last of these games. Anyway, the position does seem to be Mlarkar's for the time being, but a bit of a doubt at the end, given that that's 3 games he wasn't in the position. So we'll see when it comes to the friendlies in June. On the right side, the right winger position, again, the position is always used, and we have definite candidate Petar Stojanovic, who we have seen sometimes playing in the right back position. In fact, he's coded as a right back, but we've moved him here because of his recent play in this position. We also have a possible candidate in Nino Zugelj. So let's look at these players. Stojanovic is 28 years old and has been with the team since 2014. He has 52 caps and 2 goals, and he plays for Italy since 2022. He's on loan to Sampdoria since 2023. And actually this and probably other loans here are probably actually over now that the season has ended, but will kind of behave as if those loan spells are still on. Stojanovic has started 11 of their 13 games since the start of 2023, on the bench for 1 and not selected for 1. So a definite candidate here. Nino Zugelj has no caps for the national team. He is 24 years old and plays for Bodo Glimt in Norway since 2022. He got his first appearance on the bench in November 2023. Didn't start any games, but he was on the bench for 3 matches and not selected for 2 others. So that recent participation forces us to consider him a possible candidate, although he's really not part of the narrative, having not started any games or even subbed in. So looking at the position, it is Stojanovic, who is coded as a right back, playing about 2/3 of the game. And that includes game 3, where the 4-2-2-2 formation made it a right attacking midfield position. We saw he sometimes played as a right back, and when he did, he was replaced by players who pop up in various midfield positions, Lovric, Zach, and Verbic. In the final game, in the second last game, it was left winger Mlakar who played the position, and maybe that's why I thought that Mlakar was still a starter. Okay, that is it for right wingers, and we move on to the forward section because we don't have any. Wait a minute, we do have one player coded as an attacking midfielder, although the position is not used in the 4-4-2. So let's take a look at him, and that player is Luka Zahovic, and he's only at the possible but unlikely level. So Luka Zahovic is 29 years old and has 14 caps with the national team, but over the last period he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 9, but not selected for the last 3 matches. So perhaps a bit harsh saying he's unlikely when he was called up for 10 of the games. But we'll leave him where he is because if he does appear on the squad, we'll come back and talk about him a little bit. Okay, now we can move on to the forwards because we have, because it's time, I'll just say that. We don't have any secondary strikers, so we just look at forwards here. So we have a definite candidate in Benjamin Sesko. We do have Jan Mlakar because he's coded as a forward, but we have moved him to left wing and dealt with him there. So our next candidate is the likely Andras Sporar. We have a second likely candidate in Zan Vipotnik. One possible candidate remains, and that is Zan Selar. And that is it for Slovenia, just 4 candidates in this position. Even though it's always a 2-man position in their 4-4-2 formation, which they use more than 80% of the time. So not a lot of candidates to choose from here. And let's look at them. The first is Benjamin Sesko, just 21 years old, but already 27 caps and an impressive 11 goals since 2021. Sesko plays for Leipzig in Germany since 2023 and was with Red Bull Salzburg for 4 years before that. And Okay, so he scored 5 of their 20 goals in this qualification campaign, making him their top scorer. He started 11 of their 13 games. He was on the bench for 1 and not selected for 1. That's probably that January friendly. So Benjamin Sesko, a definite candidate, a very important player for them. Next, we have Andres Sporar, who is 30 years old. He has 51 caps and 11 goals since his first in 2016. And yet another player with Panathinaikos in Greece. He's been with them since 2022, but was with Sporting Lisbon, a bigger club in Portugal from 2020 to 2022. However, he was loaned out by them. I'm not sure if he played any games for Sporting Lisbon. One of the teams he was loaned to was Middlesbrough in England, and he has also played briefly in Switzerland and Germany. So Andras Sporar has started 9 of their 13 games in the recent period, was on the bench for 2 and not selected for 2. So we consider him a likely candidate, although he's probably a definite given the limited number of candidates here. Next, also considered likely, is Zan Vipotnik. He's 22 years old and has 8 caps and 2 goals since 2023 and plays for Bordeaux in France. That's his first club outside of Slovenia. Vipotnik got his first cap in March of 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 13 games. He was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 4 and not selected for 1 match. So that kind of puts him at the likely level, but actually other factors, especially playing for Bordeaux in France and his consistent call-ups, make him probably a definite candidate, just like Sporar. Finally, we have Zan Salar, and he is 25 years old, and he has 8 caps, but no goals since 2021 for Slovenia. He plays for Lugano in Switzerland since 2021, but was with Roma in Italy for 3 years before that. Loaned out, though, by Roma. So Salar has started 1 of their 13 games over the recent period, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 8. He was injured for 1 and not selected for 1. So again, given the limited number of candidates, probably a bit higher than where we have put him here. Okay, that brings us to the end of the not only forwards, but our section on the players. So we move into section 3 and some closing thoughts. Well, as you can see from the forwards alone, not a lot of candidates to select from, and that means usually it's the same players in the same positions, and some of them playing out of position given the lack of players that Slovenia has. However, you know, a fairly decent squad, both in terms of their club affiliations and their results. Second place in their qualifying group here. Let's go back and look at the squad and identify the starters that we can. And we begin with manager Matjas Kek, who we will consider a definite starter, if you will, because we don't think he'll be replaced. I'm just highlighting him in green there. Okay, definitely Jan Oblak is the starting goalkeeper, probably their most illustrious player in terms of club affiliation. And so a definite starter for them. We can expect to see him on the field. In central defense, the main partnership is definitely, where's my man? Jaka Bijol is a definite starter. His partner in the defense, a bit less definite, but probably Blazic, who started 7 of the 13 games. But I'm not confident enough to say he's a definite starter there. We have a couple of other candidates who have stepped in. Over to left back, here too, Eric Jansa, the main candidate, but not confident enough to say that he is a definite starter for them. But quite likely, maybe I'll put put him. No, I'm not going to hedge with the blue highlight. I'm going to stick to the green, only the ones we're confident with. On the right side of the defense, we are confident that Zan Karnitsnik will be the starter. Not necessarily in that position, though, because he did start, I think, 3 games on the left side there. When he's missing, it will be the right winger Stojanovic, who we'll get to shortly. On the defensive midfield side, Slovenia uses a 4-4-2 formation, so the defensive midfielders and central midfielders are indistinguishable. So it's actually central midfielder Serin, Adam Gnezda Serin, who is a definite starter here. And it's actually quite likely Timmy Max Elsnik. Actually, I am confident enough to nominate him as a starter in the central midfield. So we have a few other candidates who pop up, but not nearly as much as them. Going over to left wingers, the formation again, a 4-4-2. So there's a left winger and a right winger. And we have a couple of candidates here. Jan Malakar is probably the most likely candidate. He should be ahead of Benjamin Verbic because he starts far more games, but maybe not enough for me to nominate him as a starter, especially since he played just one of the last 3 games. So no highlight for Malakar. Over on the right wing, though, we do have a highlight for Petar Stojanovic. He definitely will be a starter, probably as a right winger, but we saw that he did play right defense sometimes, and actually he is coded as a right defender, although we might have to change that going forward. So Stojanovic, someone we can highlight. And in the forward line, Benjamin Sesko, a really crucial player for them, will be a starter. They don't have a lot of forwards to choose from, and they always use 2 of them. And I think I am ready to highlight Andras Sporar as a definite starter as well. Zanvipotnik being more of a substitute, replacing them at this point, but could move into the starting position as the tournament goes on. All right, that is it, our race through and prediction of starters. Let's review injuries now for the team, and this section is very short because blessedly they have no injuries concerns. And that's very important for a team like Slovenia, who don't have a deep bench to choose from. All of their players are healthy. So that's good. And we will update injuries. And actually, as a transition to our last thing here, in addition to updating injuries, we will also go through the squad that we created here and point out any notable non-selections and any surprise inclusions, including new players. And we'll update injuries, although it's very doubtful there will be any at this point unless someone gets injured in the friendlies. But I'm not sure we're going to be able to do this before the friendlies are played. We'll see. Anyway, that is it. I hope that helps you enjoy watching Slovenia in the Euro Cup. And stay tuned for part 2, where we will look at the final squad. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.